Hi, welcome back. So today we are going to be talking about food waste in the home, because last week we talked about bringing food to our houses.
Yeah, and so the first thing we want to talk about is proper storage of food. So many of our produce items have to be refrigerated, but things like garlic, potatoes, bananas actually can hang out on your counter and they'll stay good. So just kind of knowing what food needs to go in the refrigerator and what foods can potentially be stored outside of the refrigerator is a good place to start. Additionally, there are different methods of storing food even within the refrigerator. So some things like leafy greens, celery, and green onions do better if you actually store them in a jar or something with water and keep the base of it in the water so that it stays nice and crunchy and fresh for you and doesn't get kind of like deflated in the fridge. So that's just one example. So proper food storage is the first thing, because if your food isn't stored right, it is gonna go bad quicker.
Right, and that brings us to our next point, where we want to eat the food before it goes bad. Even though we talked a little bit about preserving in our last video, even when you preserve, it's not going to last forever. So what you want to try to do is eat the food before it goes bad, before it gets to any kind of point where you won't be able to eat it anymore.
Sorry.
The next thing about that is, how do you do that? Especially when you are feeding a full house, a whole family of people. How do you know when you have bought too much or not enough food? And one great way to avoid that is by meal planning. At the beginning of the week or the end of the week, you can figure out how many meals are we going to make, what are we going to eat each day, and figuring out those kinds of things will help you avoid food waste later in the week.
Another point is that we tend to not use all parts of the plant. In one of our first videos, I took you and showed you how to harvest beets. And I told you that a lot of the times in the store, sometimes we only see the beet root. We don't see the stalks, we don't see the leaves. And one thing we can try to do to reduce food waste is eat all the parts of the plant that we can. So for beets, for example, you can eat the leaves of the beet, you can use them to make a pesto, or you can use them as salad leaves. The stalks can be used to juice, or you can even just cut them up finely and throw them in your salad for a little bit of crunchiness. And then the actual beetroot can be boiled, roasted, or pickled to be eaten. So depending on the produce you have, just trying to look up and find out how you can incorporate all parts of the food item.
Yeah, and so now that you've actually prepared all your food, all the parts of the plant that you could possibly eat, now it's time to eat it and enjoy it. One major thing to having a quality life is by eating quality food. When you eat good ingredients, your body feels a lot better. And then don't forget to eat your leftovers. Leftovers will last a very short amount of time, and it's really easy to forget about them. So what we want to do is kind of incorporate leftovers into our meal plan if possible.
Yeah, and then lastly, nobody is perfect. It's hard to use all parts. It's sometimes hard to use all parts of the plant because our culture doesn't really do that. You forget about those leftovers in the back corner of the fridge. Nobody is perfect, and so you can't really beat yourself up when sometimes food goes bad at home.
Right, and so when food does go bad at home, stay tuned for our next video where we will actually talk about what you can do with the food waste at home that's